I'll call to order the January 4th, 2023 Fishers Plan Unit Development Committee meeting. We do have a quorum today to conduct business. Our first agenda item is PUD-22-6 Lake Meadows Phase 2. Becky Fay is requesting PUD committee approval for a duplex development to be known as Lake Meadows Phase 2. The current zoning is PUD Lake Meadows. The subject site is located at the common address 11570 East 126th Street. And we have Bree King to present on behalf of the staff. Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen of the PUD committee. I'm excited to present PUD 22-6, which is Lake Meadows Phase 2. Here you can see it is located at the corner of I-69 and 126th, around that giant pond there. So Phase 1 is the existing assisted living center, and Phase 2 is what we are reviewing today. So you can see on the screen here, there are 13 duplexes proposed to be built around the pond for a total of 26 for-rent units for senior citizens. This is the existing structure that you can see here. So I just want to note that the masonry and siding elements, as well as the general color scheme, will be continuing as motif in these new duplexes, which is nice. What's interesting about the Lake Meadows PUD is it doesn't have specific architectural standards. It just says that it would like the new duplexes to be in substantial quality as Whispering Woods, which is a neighborhood to the northeast. So here you can see examples of homes that are currently in Whispering Woods. What I want to highlight as items that staff believes make these proposed elevations for Lake Meadows substantially similar are the gables above the garages, as well as the elements of masonry and the feature windows. If you'll also note that these are 2-car garages, that'll come up later, not to spoil the surprise. Here's a couple more elevations from Whispering Woods. So as you can see, masonry, they look very nice for duplexes, very clean cut. So here we are jumping into the first 2 of the 6 types of duplexes that are currently being proposed. So what's interesting about these duplexes as compared to Whispering Woods is these are 1-car garage. So automatically that improves the look in staff's opinion. So it kind of mitigates that giant blank look. If you also notice, these garage doors are decorative and they're tinted to match the main color of the home, which is a nice touch as well. Here are types 3 and 4. Once again, very similar. You can see the gables present, large entry windows, just like Whispering Woods, and then you have your elements of masonry. Here are the final types, 5 and 6. So if you're also noticing that the color motif is very similar to Phase 1 of Lake Meadows. So staff does feel like these elevations are consistent in character and quality with the Whispering Woods neighborhood, and even in some cases exceeds that quality, for example, with the garage doors. So there is the masonry element, the varied roof lines that are similar, as well as an exciting feature that we had worked extensively with the petitioner on are those large front porches that we feel will serve the clientele very well. So staff does recommend approval as presented. We have worked extensively with the petitioner who has been very great with working with us and updating these elevations. So petitioner is here if you have any questions for myself or the petitioner.
Thank you. Would the petitioner like to present?
My name's Dan Hubbard. I'm with Crestline Development. We're the original developer of the Lake Meadows Assisted Living site as well, and continue to own and operate it. It's been a wonderful facility for us. just a lot of wetlands on this area, and it took us a while to figure out how we wanted to rework or work the site. 'Cause IDEM actually gave us approval to fill in the pond, but not touch the wetlands. So it's been a couple of years of back and forth, and we didn't want to fill in the pond, and so this is very similar to what the original idea that we had come up with when we came to the PUD committee originally. I think we actually got one less unit in here because of the set-asides and stuff, when trying to stay as much out of the wetlands as we could. But we've worked on it for a long time, and staff's been great helping us walk us through it, because it is a different design than just one big building like we had done before. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments?
Just a couple, I guess, more general comments. Architecturally, I think from a design standpoint, I don't have any concerns or issues. So these are senior targeted. Are they? Is there a direct connection with the assisted living facility then? Do they have access to the dining hall and things like that?
We're still trying to work that part out, but yeah, we're designing it to, our thought is it'll be people that are in our assisted living and a close family member, a spouse or whatever, but not necessarily kids. That's one reason we limited it to one car garage. And
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure from a connectivity standpoint
yeah,
to the actual building, not just a sidewalk around the pond or something like that, that there's adequate access. Can you give me an idea, I guess, depth of the buildings off of the street? How far they'll sit back?
I don't recall. It's like I said, it's been a couple of years that we've been working on this, and
Especially with a one-car garage, I just want to make sure that there's adequate depth to the driveway.
there's room to park in a car.
Okay,
along the
without
driveway.
encroaching on any
Correct.
sidewalk or anything
Correct.
like that. Okay, that has been a concern of mine with some of the townhome developments, is they get so tight that the car ends up encroaching on the sidewalk, and now the people have to walk in the street, and that becomes
Yeah,
an issue.
this is fully ADA designed, so anticipating wheelchairs to be able to get throughout the property. And I don't know if you've ever come over and walked the path and stuff. It's full ADA compliant path, so there's no step ups, anything like that, and this will continue into that.
Great. Okay. No other questions?
The only comment I've got is we need to make sure that the residents understand, because you're along I-69 corridor there, that the city of Fishers has nothing to do with sound barrier walls.
I know.
Okay?
If-
We get asked that question a lot when you're right up along 69. Can you please put up sound barrier walls? That's an NDOT project.
I think we
NDOT
asked them.
Yeah, NDOT's got to
asked
approve it.
originally when we were-
I know you can even put it in some of the declarations there, but I just want that on the record that
Yeah.
we don't put up sound barrier walls in Fishers.
I think the wall extends about 400 feet onto the property, and that, I don't know how you go back on this thing, but the site plan, you can see, because the houses in Whispering Woods, they couldn't sell those lots, or it took a long time.
Right.
So the last two, they're actually kind of along that highway area or behind that sound wall
Right.
currently.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, they came to us and they were screaming and yelling and doing everything else they could there, and we don't control that. We can't put up a sound barrier wall. It's an NDOT deal, so
Yeah.
as long as somewhere we've got it noted that's all I'm saying. But I think it looks good. It's a good
Thank you.
project.
Off the record, I don't think the sound barrier walls do much good.
No, I don't disagree with you, Sean, but they still ask for them.
We
Okay?
actually got a lot of
Yeah.
compliments
I-
after we put the building up, because the neighbors across 126.
building
Right, yeah. The Building Act has a better sound barrier, sure.
I have a comment and a question. Mr. Curran said that's off the record, but I think it's on the record.
You're on record now.
Yeah. Question regarding, as I understand it, it's 13 new duplexes, and we have, I guess, 6 different elevations that can be selected from.
Well, we've told where each elevation was going, because that was part of the problem in the beginning, is the anti-monotony clause. Like, we were trying to work that out, and I couldn't get the architect to understand it so we brought in a designer, and
Those darn architects.
yeah, it was a particular architect.
Sure. But that's where my question was going in terms of the monotony.
Yeah.
So,
So so they won't, we've have the set schedule of where they go, and there's no two alike next
Okay.
door, next to each other.
Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second?
Roll call, please. Okay.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes,
Thank you.
the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Our next agenda item is PUD-22-20 Cynthian Woods. Rick Lawrence is requesting PUD committee approval for a 61-unit residential development. The property is currently in the process of being rezoned to PUD Cynthian Woods. The subject site is located southeast of 136th and Cynthian. And we have Bree King again for the staff to present. Thank you.
Hello, Bree King, Planning and Zoning. I return for PUD 22-20 Cynthian Woods, which is quite a different and exciting product, so I'm interested to see your comments. So here you can see the project location highlighted in purple. It is the southeast corner of 136th and Cynthian. Currently in the process of being rezoned to PUD, so that'll be heard tonight at Plan Commission. Here you can see the concept plan. So the homes, the cottage homes, will be in the northern half of that property, and then the southern portion will be maintained as it is today, heavily wooded. Here is a good image for you to understand the community character. So as you can see, these homes are closer together than what we may have seen in the past. They take up more of the lot, and they're a bit more varied. So that is the overall view from the top on the top picture, and in the bottom you have what would be a street view. So the proposed development features these single-family homes, and they'll cover most of the lot to create this unique community. There are two main home types that staff use to look at these. So there's homes that include recessed garages, and then homes that don't have the garages recessed. So here are the first group of elevations, which have more of the typical garage that we will see. So these elevations feature dynamic roof lines and large feature windows, as well as a satisfying mix of material type. These are the more unique that we probably haven't seen before here, and these are the elevations with the recessed garages. So some of the photos on the bottom, even though it's a little bit hard to see those recessed garages, it makes it more look like a rear loaded or more of a traditional style home, which is a look that staff is really appreciative of. So at first reading at City Council, it was suggested to put in a requirement that these rear elevations be beefed up just a bit. So the petitioner has kindly worked with us, and these rear elevations will have one additional architectural feature added. So staff does also recommend approval as presented for these elevations, as we believe it meets all the architectural requirements of the proposed PUD and will complement the character of the area. I'm available for questions, and we do have the petitioner if you have comments for them as well.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Rick Lawrence. I'm an attorney with Nelson and Frankenberger in Carmel, Indiana. With me tonight are John Dybashewitz, a land use professional with my office, Jesse Pullman with William Trace, and Todd Pyatt and Paul Clare with Pyatt Homes. Bree did a really good job of summarizing the matter before you this evening. I'm going to take a few minutes just to go over it real quick, and then if you have any questions, we're obviously here to answer those for you. As Bree indicated, this site is south of 136th Street on Cynthian Road. Here's a close-up view of that. Surrounding this site is the Barrington Estates neighborhood, Britton Falls neighborhood to the east and south, and then Hunter's Run, which is across Cynthian Road on the west side there. This is the concept plan before you this evening, as it shows 61 single-family for-sale homes to be built in generally the northwest quadrant of the parcel. We worked with staff, as Bree indicated, to clarify some of the architectural issues, but then we also worked with staff in the city to come up with a plan to donate the remainder of that parcel, which is shown as Greenway Trail Common Area, which is roughly about 2/3 of the site, to the city for a future park use, which won't be developed, and it'll maintain its character that you see there today. As Bree indicated, these are unique product for Fishers. We don't believe that there's a neighborhood that's been proposed or built that include these type of homes. These are what sometimes has been called zipper lots, where the homes kind of fit together with one of the garages recessed in the back, as Bree indicated, and one of the garages more towards the front. I would note that the front garage is recessed off of the front elevation of the home about 5 feet, so it's not a blank canvas in front of you as you go down the street. This provides a unique product. It provides some outdoor living space for homeowners to use, especially the areas between the two homes where the garage is behind and then the garage in front. It's kind of like a front porch area where kids and family members can congregate. These are character exhibits of the front of the homes. You can see that some of the homes are in the front, or some of the garages are in the front and others are in the rear. Bree had separated them out. This is kind of a commingling of them. Again, some elevations. As Bree showed, this is the rear elevations, which we believe, with the enhancements of the added windows on the garages on the red house and that gray house, really do make these houses that are going to back up against Cynthia Ann Road look more like fronts of houses. A lot of architectural features in this manner. At the top is an actual drone picture of this community that's built with these homes at 146 and River Road. The middle picture is an elevation rendering, and then the bottom is also a drone picture, so that's exactly what they will look like when they're built and how they're laid out. So with that said, we'll answer any questions you might have. We did work with staff and council members and their suggestions when we were at council in November to adjust the PUD and architectural standards and add excuse me, matters to resolve any questions that were out there.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Any question or comments from board members of the staff or the petitioner?
Just, I guess, a couple quick questions. I'd like to address the garage doors. I'd like them to be more decorative if we can do that. I think we've been asking that all over. I think it's going to give it just a tad bit more character. The architecture I kind of enjoy. The architecture is a little bit more East Coasty, which is where I'm from. So I'd like that to be at least be looked at, you know, whether we add windows or we add something flary to those garage doors, because I think we've been pushing that all over the place. I think it gives that kind of just that elevated status when you're going there. Additionally, I want to make sure that, you know, are we okay at council? This has got 1 foot setbacks off the property line is what I remembered seeing. So, yeah, I understand there's zipper lots, and I understand what that term means, but you've got issues when you get to council at a 1 foot setback.
Yeah, and we have a standard in there that's a minimum 10 feet between buildings,
Yep.
even though it has that 1 foot setback. So I haven't heard any concerns with those setback requirements.
Okay,
And I made sure to highlight that at council at first reading too. So I think we're good.
A couple of them may have been asleep, so we're going to wait to see what happens, because I think we could end up with problems with 2, just FYI, but you got 9 on there, so we got to hold the rest of them. So that's just a comment,
Yep.
overall
thank you.
comment. Additionally, it doesn't appear to be a lot of room off the back of the lots for adding whatever people like to add off the back of lots, whether it be a deck, whether it be whatever. So are we prepared at you know, zoning appeals to potentially deal with that, you know, as they come in, because they're going to be encroaching on that back lot line if they want to add a deck on the back, right? Because the minute people get there, they go, hey, this is nice, I want to add on. You know, how far are we going to allow them to go back there? We may want to look at that as well. I'm not saying to change anything you guys are doing. I'm looking down the road here going, I can see this going to Board of Zoning Appeals, and we should have at least some answer to that. Or when these guys are selling this product, they're going, you know, look, it has to sit as is. You know, if you build anything, you realize you have a setback requirement of X, right, as you're purchasing that home, right? So we're not inundating BZA with a bunch of people wanting to build decks, right? And, you know, I know that for a fact, because in my house, I immediately put an outdoor living area in mine, but I had plenty of setback to do it, right? This one's not gonna have that. So, you know, again, these are families. I think they're gonna be purchasing these homes because they look pretty sizable. Look, again,
They're young
nice.
families
Yeah.
or older couples, like a step-down home.
Yeah, I get it. And again, so either way, I think that could be one of those things. Again, nothing from you guys, you know, to deal with. I'm just really looking more at staff to go, these are things that we need to consider. So, and whether or not we make that a requirement of their CCRs when they're going in there or something, or the homeowners association go, look, you can put a 5-foot deck on there and then you're at lot line, people. I mean, you can't go beyond that, so they have an understanding, so they're not gonna move in and go, I'm gonna build a 25-foot deck here, I'm gonna be right on lot line, right? So, yeah, that's my only, that's, you know, for you guys selling them, I just wanna make sure we're doing that for the residents, so we're not inundating ourselves back at BZA.
Understood. To answer a couple of your questions, we do have an Exhibit D to the PUD ordinance that shows garage door illustrations, showing more of those windows and hardware and whatnot.
Okay.
So we intend to go above and beyond what the ordinance requires.
Great.
And then as
I was
to-
looking at it on my phone today, because I was all over the place, and I had trouble loading everything, so I didn't get to see all
Understood.
that.
And regarding the side yard setback that you originally raised, we have taken precautions to try to alleviate some of the issues that have come up in other developments where the homes are closer together. There's masonry, there's hardy plank, which is not the same as vinyl, which will tend to have mildew accumulate with dampness. We don't plan on putting sprinkler systems in the side yards, and we're also tying the downspouts into an underground drain to then tie into the backyard drain, so we get any water out of that area. But what makes this setback special is the unique nature of this subdivision, and that's why it's necessary.
Yeah, I just understand it because I hear, you know, the chatter from the rest of those council members, which I spend a bunch of time with, and I know where they
Right.
get hung up. So that was my only point. I don't necessarily have an issue with what you guys are doing. I appreciate the things that you guys are doing to alleviate some of those problems. The answer is, you know, when you don't get sun on something, it gets over there, and that's why I own a power washer, because I get some on my house too. So, you know, I just power wash it off. It's not mold. It is mildew for sure. It's not a mold problem.
Right.
So, yeah, again, I don't really see a problem with what they're trying to do. I think the architecture looks good. I think it's a good infill product. I mean, they understand. I like the fact that you put up, you know, you got Woods up against Barrington, because we hear Howard yelling and screaming about stuff coming up on his neighborhood, right? So I haven't heard that, so that's good. So I think that's why they're probably not yelling, is because we got that buffer there. And they realize when they buy that house, they're gonna have commercial to the, what is that, to the west or north? I can't tell.
Northwest.
Northwest, yeah, kind of over there. I mean, that'll end up being a commercial, at least it's zone commercial, I believe. So there'll be commercial, and there will be lights, and there will be potential things going on commercially there. I don't think it's gonna be any kind of, but it could be some sort of strip center or, you know, small grocery or something at some point in time, I believe, right? So they just have to understand that. But again, I think it's a good product.
Thank you. We did also have in-person neighborhood meetings with the board of Barrington Estates and with about 60 residents of Britton Falls, and then tried to do some Zoom meetings with
Yep.
Hunter's Run, just to get everybody to explain the project and then get any comments and concerns, which we've tried to address on various levels.
Right. Yeah, again, I think it's a good project, so.
Just a couple questions. I really appreciate the density of it. I think that generally speaking, properties have too much property. So I think the density is good. I appreciate that. I also appreciated the comment about the dedication of the land back to the city. That was going to be one of my questions, is what guarantee is there that isn't going to be developed as something else, and all of that, the trees and all that taken out. So appreciate that. I understand the concept in the zipper lot, how those work. Is obviously that's going to impact your kind of anti-monotony clause, that you can only, you're really limiting what can go next to what, because you've got a restriction on a front garage
Right.
to a rear loaded garage, or not a rear loaded garage, but a setback garage. So just want to make sure that isn't going to cause an issue with your anti-monotony clause, that somehow you run into an issue with A, B, C. I can't put that there because it's got it. The garage has to step back, and I can't because the other side I've got this, and so just want to make sure that has been thought out, because you're confined a little bit because of the number of floor plans you've got.
Right, and We believe there's enough elevations to prevent that from happening.
There's
And
6 of each, is that right?
seven.
7 of each, okay.
7 buildings and then 3 elevation styles of each.
Okay, okay. No other questions. I think architecture, I think from a product standpoint, they look good. And price point on these?
400,000.
Good luck with that in today's environment. Holy cow. I said too many meetings today where I found out what construction cost per foot was. I almost died. So.
Thank
Nothing
you.
else.
Only comment I have, I do appreciate the dedication of the open space area. If I recall correctly, did you say it was 2/3 of the footprint approximately?
Roughly 2/3 of it.
Okay.
I
How
don't
many
have the
acres
exact-
approximately?
Well, the whole thing's 40, so
Okay,
you're probably
so
looking at 30,
25 acres?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion if there's no other comments.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second?
and we have a second. Roll call, Kay, please.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes, the motion carries.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is PUD-22-21, Geis Manor Architecture. Tony Bagato with Lanier is requesting approval of additional home elevations for the Geis Manor PUD. The subject site is located north of 113th Street and east of Florida Road. The property is zoned PUD Geis Manor, and we have, once again, Bree King on behalf of the staff to present.
Welcome back to the Brianna Show. Before you, we are presenting PUD 22-21, which is Geis Manor. It's actually interesting. You may remember January 2022, we added 3 elevations to this PUD as well. So we are very consistent. So this location is just north of the Agri Park, and it is proposed to be 47 residential lots. You can see the plat on the right of the screen. Once we got the new elevations, we requested that our architectural reviewers review the elevations and provide feedback just to make sure that the new elevations are consistent in character with what was previously approved. During the presentation, I'll first just show the elevations so you can get a clear view of what's there, and then I'll provide the architectural reviewers' comments as well. Just to summarize their comments very quickly, our architectural reviewers suggested minor adjustments to the types of building materials, colors, and a few architectural features to better coordinate with the approved elevations, as well as adjust the roof line on an elevation, and then a couple different color contrast items as well. So full comments were attached to the staff report, and I'll go over them at a later date or a later time too. Just in case you don't remember from last year, these were the elevations that were approved in 2022. On the left, we have the Muirfield, and then on the right, we have the Riviera. The last previously approved elevation is the South Hill. So now we move on to what is proposed today. So they are proposing to add this Barrington version here. So you can see that there are elements of masonry available. There is a good amount of roof line changes, as well as large entry features. And you can see there are decorative garage doors as well. Here is the other elevation proposed today, the Waverly. And then I'm going to jump right into our comments that we provided to the petitioner, and then the petitioner will address those in his presentation. So a few of the review suggestions were extending brick masonry. You can see it's a little different on your screen, but at the A arrow is where that was recommended. And then they also wanted to consider additional enhancement at that taller central gable. So just a bracket or some kind of feature to better accentuate that. Then we have Barrington B. This was the elevation that our reviewers had the most comments on. So you can see the darker highlighted areas A, The reviewer suggested changing those areas to a gable to better mirror what was previously approved. They also said at the B arrow that the differing section of brick veneer at the right and front end just seems awkward. And they also commented that the brick veneer at the columns and front entry doesn't provide any additional enhancement. So they considered adding a lighter color trim just to better increase that contrast. Then we have Barrington C. So again, consider extending that brick masonry up and then providing more contrast just to enhance that a little more. Next, we'll take a look at the Waverly elevations. So once again, a common theme of extending that masonry up and editing the color contrast just to get that look. Waverly B, again, you can see using the contrast and then a more robust columns on this just to really make that front entryway stand out since it is a bit recessed. Waverly C, again with the gables, suggested changing those hipped roofs to the gable system just to better mirror what was previously approved. And again, considering more contrast between the panels and the trim color. So staff does recommend approval with the comments from Veritas addressed. So I will pass it over to the petitioner to be able to address those comments for you all tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tony Bagata with Lennar Homes. With me tonight is Nicole Scott, our VP of Marketing and Sales, and Kylie Amick with Land Acquisition. And I want to thank staff for their time and effort. There's a lot of time to review these plans and appreciate the comments. As she mentioned, these are new to our collection of the estate. When we had the other plans approved last year, these were finished up by architects shortly after, or we would have introduced them all at the same time. Because currently our estate collection only has 3 floor plans with various elevations, so we're trying to expand that collection to create more diversity, which is our goal within this community. We would like to enhance our streetscape with a variety of new home types. The goal here, these homes are actually already currently being built in Vermilion, and then also at a community called Troy Estates in Carmel. These homes, they're within the same square footage, but they have a beautiful interior side, which you don't get to see. But these range from 30 to 70,000 higher than the homes that are already approved. These draw in a higher clientele because we feel that this brings in today's standards. The comments, we went through the letter, we reviewed them, and I'm not going to go through them all. I just want to kind of touch on briefly a few of the points. But we're trying to bring in with these homes more of a modern design. And what we're seeing in the market today with that design, there's more of a monotone look in some of these new homes versus these multicolor homes. And again, bringing in some of the elements that they're requesting. One starts to tie in too much similarity from the other homes, which we're trying to get actually away from. We're trying to keep diversity. And again, those are more traditional architectural features that we don't believe fits within kind of the design concept we're trying to go for. So it really kind of creates 2 issues that I'll focus on as for us as, Lennar within the community. So as I mentioned here, so the Barrington, they talked about, I don't know if my mouse will show up, but they're on the left side is the Barrington we're proposing, and they asked for those hips to become gables. And, looking at like the South Hill, that's a South Hill B, if we all of a sudden create, those gables and start changing the trim tone to look similar, again, we feel it's going to start to look very similar to the South Hill B. And that's a concern of ours. This is meant to be more of a modern, kind of clean, simple look. Architect, again, like the varying of the brick on the side. And the other thing is these are also, color examples you're seeing of one palette. We have multiple color sources. So related to the color comments, we can remove a color if that's an issue, if there's something they want a little bit more lively. But again, the goal, as I would mention, we're trying to get a little more monotone with these homes, given the modernness of them. So my point there is you create those gables over the main focal points. We feel it can just be very similar to that home on the right, which is already approved. And then the Waverly is going for a much more modern, simple look. Again, a little more monotone on the left. And the comment was to look at bringing brick up all the way up to the gable, and then in that middle element, try to darken it up for some contrast. And this is another South Hill. This is South Hill A. Again, if we look at that proposal, we again believe it's going to start to look very similar to this option. So we think that's really moving away from our goals and objectives of what we're trying to achieve with the new homes. And then the second point, really to bring in from a business practice as a home builder that builds in other communities, you would find it interesting, but we do hear feedback from customers. If they bought a home, for example, in Vermillion, and we build something that's a little more custom here, they can or may get upset, and this has happened in other communities, where they get upset saying, I didn't know that was an option available, and that's a sales agent in another community that doesn't know we're doing this in this community. And so really from a marketing standpoint and from a business standpoint and our customer standpoint, we like to keep everything very, the same. We don't try to build custom homes in the sense of these little tweaks. It creates sometimes even trouble on the construction side, making sure the plans match what they're supposed to. And we believe that these homes are beautiful homes. We have an in-house architect that's been with the company for 30 years. And this is the intent that we're trying to achieve, from a marketing side, that the consumer seems to be interested in, as well as us as a builder. So, we don't want to ever come off appearing difficult with staff, or, we try to work with the city as much as possible, but we are respectfully asking to approve what we're proposing tonight, or we just wouldn't actually add them to the collection, is how we would feel. So with that, I'm available for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Sean, I'll defer to you on the architectural consultant's comments and get your thoughts.
Okay. I appreciate the reviewers' comments. I think I understand kind of their take on them. I guess from my perspective, I kind of like the differentiation architecturally. I know we've had other projects in the past that have come before the PUD committee, either multifamily or residential, where there's been hey, let's look at something a little bit more modern, a little bit different than what everybody else already has in Fishers. So I think that maybe these are kind of stepping towards that. So I don't want to discourage it, I guess, from that standpoint. And I think, architecturally, I think, this one that you've got up right now, I think, I would, if I was buying a house and those were my two options, I'd pick the Waverly as it sits today. I think it's architecturally, I think it's a very nice looking, kind of a modern take on a farmhouse look, which I'm guessing is kind of the look
Correct.
you were looking for, which I think you lose that if you add that brick all the way up, and now it's going to look just like the other one. The Barrington one, I think that one obviously has a much more contemporary look to it. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not the marketing person or the salesperson, so I don't know. Does that go too far from a sales perspective of someone looking for something a little bit more modern, or someone looking for something a lot more modern? That's not my job to do, obviously. And you're building these to order, so you may find that nobody picks that one, or you may find that a lot of people pick it. I guess I would, on that one, again, I don't know that I would necessarily say add the gables to make it look like the other ones, because again, if you're trying to differentiate, are you creating more of the same by trying to differentiate it?
Yeah, and especially with 47 homes and the anti-monotony code, we felt having more variety would be better, that was kind of our concern in reviewing the comments, that it would be too similar.
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, if there are elements that make sense, that enhance what's presented and still maintain that a little bit more contemporary feel, then I'd be okay with them. But I don't know that, from my perspective, that I would require it.
Thank you.
I'd buy the Barrington today. I like it a lot. I like the hip roof. Maybe I'm just a more modern guy. Not that I have a distaste for the gables, but at the end of the day, that home was not designed to have gables. I can tell looking at it right now. I like the look. I love the square windows above the garage side. I love that they're high. That means I don't have to put, blinds on them immediately when I move in, so people can't look into my garage and find out what they want to steal. So I like that too. If we go over to the other one, Tony, if you will, again, it's a farmhouse look for me. I'm not a huge fan of white, but You can paint it whatever color you want to paint it as long as it goes into the color scheme. I do love the awnings that are out front of it. I think that's awesome. I just think that's a cool addition to it. I don't need to have brick all the way up the house. I understand from a maintenance standpoint, and people kind of associate brick and hardscape with a more luxurious house, but I would love to see the way these things are accoutramented inside, particularly at your price point,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they're going to be pretty high-end. You're in a very high-end area. I mean, you're encroaching in right on that estate residential going over there to the northeast, I think. And then, yeah, you've got intercoastal down below that deal. Now, the homes up to the other side are starting to maybe scale down a tad, but not really a lot,
Yeah.
right? There still appeared to be, at least in the red arrowed stuff, who owns the tree line down there, Megan? That would be to the east of there? Because I saw the block that was there for where they're gonna develop, but the tree line's being preserved. I mean, that's a big
That's
hunk of
part of our
trees.
property.
Is it? Yeah, that's a
It'll be
big
common
hunk of
area.
trees. And we're gonna protect that
Yep.
whole barrier of trees because that's a state residential on the other side of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that they're not gonna want that thing to come down.
Right.
Although if I were a kid, I'd immediately go in there and build a tree fort. So, yeah, I guess, Megan, I understand what they wanted to do, Veritas wanted to do, and I work with Veritas all the time. I think they're great guys. I'm just not seeing what they're saying as a big kind of hurdle for me. I think I appreciate what Sean said too. I mean, if left to those two properties, I'd go by the Waverly because it's different. And maybe I'm just liking to be a little bit different, right? Because you go through a lot of neighborhoods, and not that they look bad, but there is a lot of similarity to it, so.
Even with an anti-monotony clause.
Even with the,
you still
anti-
get a lot of
yeah,
similarity.
you do get a lot of similarity. And I understand that you get that, kind of architectural difference, which we do all the time. Hey, put a dormer up here, put more articulation, make sure the overhangs, blah, 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 and I get that. So, but overall, those products that you're showing me, I have absolutely zero issues with.
Thank you. I have no additional comments. You guys said all I would say. I would entertain a motion if there's no other comments or
I'll
questions.
make a motion to approve as presented by the petitioner.
Took the words out of my mouth. I
We have-
second it.
We have a motion and a second. Kay, roll call, please.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes, the motion does carry.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
The next agenda item is PUD-22-22, Commons at Fishers District Event Center. Thompson Thrift is requesting approval of architecture for the new event center located in the Commons at Fishers District. The subject site is located on the east side of USA Parkway, south of the yard at Fishers District. And we have Megan to present on behalf.
Yeah, switching it up on you. Thought I'd give Bree a break here. All right, so this is for the new event center that I'm sure you all are familiar with. We've been talking about it a lot over the last few months. But just to reorient us, so this is located south of 116th Street, east of I-69, just south of the Fishers District area that as it exists today, but this will be considered as a part of Fishers District as that area expands. And then I do have the concept plan shown here, and then the arrow pointing to the building that is the event center that we're talking about today. So there's several buildings within the Commons at Fishers District, and we're here today to discuss just the event center. So here is the rendering this is the north elevation. So this would be if you were in the central lawn area here, north of the site. This would be that front entrance point. And then here's just a different angle of that same facade. So this is on the other side of the building, looking south. So here are the different elevations, all four sides of it. The proposed materials do include various brick tones. We've got tan, burgundy, and off-white. We've got metal paneling and aluminum framing. So those are the general materials of the building. You can see here all of those just laid on top of each other to give you the character of what the building will look like. The event center itself is proposed to be 77 feet tall, and it will seat about 8,500 people. So it's considered a mid-size event center. I'm presenting today on behalf of the City of Fishers and Thompson Thrift, so happy to answer any questions that you have. And we do recommend approval as presented.
Thanks, Megan. I guess I have one question. So is this just cleaning up language?
So this is for approval of the architecture
Okay,
of the
okay,
event
I'm
center.
sorry.
So within the PUD ordinance, when this went through rezoning, we didn't have the elevations
Okay.
ready at that time. And so now we're coming back just for PUD committee approval of the architecture.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Any other questions, comments?
So I guess to get my bearings correct, because I can't picture exactly where this sits, relative to the Forum Conference Center, where, is it direct south of that? Or-
Yeah, so here's the Forum Event Center. So, let's see, you can't see my mouse, can you? Here you go. So the Forum Event Center sits, it's off of this concept plan, but it sits right here.
Okay,
And so this,
down there to the left.
okay. So what's due north of, I guess, underneath the back end of the blue arrow? Is that residential?
so down here, this is a residential
Okay,
subdivision.
and then the other end is,
And then this
that
is
end.
a Thompson Thrift project. It's called the Slate at Fishers District. It's a multifamily
Okay,
development
okay, I
that's
remember
currently
that.
under
Okay.
construction.
Construction, I saw.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
I remember that building, okay.
So this will be the very southern boundary of what's now the Fishers District area.
I just couldn't get exactly, I was thinking it was closer to the Forum Conference Center, their office building. Okay, I didn't realize that the multifamily was between there. Architecturally, no questions, no issues. 8,500 people, is that based on 8,500 people in which type of a setting?
Seated, like just not capacity necessarily, but just in like for the fuel.
Like for a fuel, okay, so
For
if there was a
fueling.
concert, in theory, it could seat more than that if you had people on the floor.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Do you know capacity on
Well, you
that
end
end
up,
of things?
you see, that's funny you say that, John, so I've asked that question too. So you lose behind the stage, but
Right,
you gain on floor. So
Right.
there is a
Mhm.
nominal pickup, but you're
but it's not
probably-
like you're
yeah,
gaining,
like-
you're not doubling
like
or
3 to
anything like that.
500 seats
Okay.
more, right, because you lose what's behind it.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So Megan, you were saying this is a mid-size event center seating 8,500. How is that comparable to maybe other mid-size event centers in the surrounding area, if there are any?
Yeah, I think compared to Ruoff, this is about, oh gosh, I'm on the record. I'll have to get back to you on that
Okay.
because I don't want to say anything
Yeah.
out of turn.
That's just out of curiosity.
It is significantly smaller than the
Ruoff,
Ruoff.
including the lawn, will seat about 25 or 30,000.
It's a large number. You remember, so as you're going through this thing, part of the things that we went through on this whole project, and I've been on this project for the entire time I've been on council. And it started with Paul Scott, by the way, okay, looking at different iterations of this thing. So you're very comparable in size as you start to look to other markets. Like if you go look at the Hershey Bear, who are playing hockey over in Hershey, and you take a look at that particular event center, it would be pretty comparable in size to that. That may be a little bit bigger, right? Rockford, which is their AAA affiliate to the Blackhawks, is probably a little smaller than this. I think it's 6,000 up in Rockford, if my memory serves me right. So you're very comparable. One of the things that we had that we talked at length about with the size of it is that we wanted to be able to not only get a main tenant, the fuel in there, which needed tickets, but we wanted to make sure we could do high school graduations there. We wanted to make sure we could do Fishers versus HSU basketball. You can't put enough people in the gymnasiums now at those two schools to go do that. They got to play elsewhere. You're now able to do the sectional events. They had to be held in Noblesville because Noblesville's got a much larger gym than us. So all in all, it was trying to really kind of incorporate other things other than just a hockey game, right? And that was a big deal for Scott and the city to make sure that we had other things we could do. Disney on Ice and all the rest of that kind of stuff. You have a bunch of this pickleball stuff which is going on now, so they can put, I can't remember, I thought it was like 10 pickleball courts on the floor and play a tournament there, right? I mean, it was pretty well thought out in terms of size. The architect on this, if my memory serves me right, is the one who was involved in the multi-billion-dollar redo of Madison Square Garden. Okay, so I mean, he's done them all over the world.
Yeah.
This guy, and I urge you, Sean. It's a pretty cool website they got.
Yeah.
I can't remember who they are, but he's done these all over the place, and I'm incredibly comfortable with that group. So, Oh, no, I think it's pretty cool architecture. I like the breakup of everything.
Yeah, architecturally, I don't have any
Yeah, right.
concerns with it.
I think it looks pretty neat.
Will the fuel continue to practice at the fuel tank and play here?
Well, they practice
Or-
in both down at, they currently practice down at the fairgrounds.
Also,
So, yeah,
Okay.
they don't always practice up at the fuel tank. They can practice at the fuel tank. That's basically where they're housed.
right.
Right?
That was
You
why I
get two
asked,
seats
is-
at-
Will the apartments stay
oh, yeah, they're not-
functional as
they're
they're
not
currently
moving.
Yeah, I don't
used?
think they're moving from
They're
that
not moving.
location.
He's got
They'll
a
still
house plan,
utilize
so
that.
they'll stay there.
Okay,
You know, really what they use over there, Sean, to be quite frank, is they use the gym up on the top level in there,
okay.
more than they use the ice.
More for the workout.
Yeah, the
function.
workout, because you've got youth hockey and everything else going on.
Yeah, there's enough
And
other
the other
stuff
one, I've
going
been,
on there.
spent way too much of my life inside of that other one to know what goes on in there. So, yeah, I mean, they'll practice here too, because
Right.
when they
Yeah.
can. And more than that, you could, you know, thinking about from a hockey standpoint, you know, when I go to other, like you go up to South Bend to do that, you've got the ice box in South Bend, but you're also now playing at the Compton.
Right.
So now you're able to bring in a lot more bigger tournaments for the junior fuel,
Right.
right? Because then they could have now 3
Yeah, they
sheets
could-
and potentially 5 sheets
Yeah,
of
they could
ice.
put on a tournament
They
and
could
have
put on-
2 games going on at one time.
Correct. Actually, 3 games,
Yeah.
3 sheets of ice.
Yeah.
You know, get 2 sheets up at the fuel tank and 1 here. And then if you really float over, you could actually go over into the fairgrounds down in
Right.
Indianapolis if you really got a big tournament going. So, yeah, all in all, I'm been excited about it. I've been a proponent of it for a long time. I think it's a really cool add to the city. I think they picked a perfect location for it.
Yeah.
Really did, and they really buffered it back off of those houses. I mean, they went to great lengths to try to make sure they didn't make people mad by
Yeah.
places where they put it. I mean,
Is the intent that, I think you called it commons, kind of that green space, is the intent that that's like accessory, like restaurant uses, so that you've got the connection there?
Yeah.
We'll see
For-
that coming forth.
So
on
those
the
other
future.
smaller white buildings,
Yeah.
those would be those accessory uses to
Correct.
support the event
Yeah.
center.
Right.
Yeah, restaurants.
Perfect.
Yeah, you've
What
got
about the
that
larger
Larger
building?
End is a big, as I understand it, a big multifamily mixed-use product that's market rate. I mean, I've seen some initial stuff on it. That looks pretty cool. You know, their plan is to try to engage that whole front area, you know, before and after games and
Mhm.
events that they have there.
That's what it looks
Has a-
like.
Has a multitude
Yeah.
of things to go, and then you also feed off the rest of the district.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Great.
yeah, it's not a standalone.
Very comprehensive. Well, great. I would entertain a motion.
Oh,
We have a motion by Pete,
I guess I'll second it.
second by Sean. Kay, roll call, please.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes. The motion does carry. Thank you. I think next we have staff communications.
Yeah, so I did want to I'll go through this quickly because I know we're almost at 6 o'clock here. We've got just about 8 minutes. But as Bree mentioned in her presentation, we are starting to consult with an architectural consultant, Verdis, on all of our architectural reviews. And that's because we don't have an in-house architect to review these. And so we will be outsourcing a lot of those reviews. So coming to PUD committee, you probably will see more comments from Verdis. Typically, we like to work with the petitioners before we get to you guys, so that way you don't have to make those decisions like we saw tonight. With the Lennar product, that was a little bit different because staff was generally okay, so we were okay enough to take it to you guys and have you make the decision. But usually we like to work offline through those comments. But you know, we've got 6% of our remaining land left to develop here in Fisher. So we just did through a land analysis and have determined that we've got about 1,300 acres left. And so as we reach that build out, we're going to be a little bit more picky about what we allow on that remainder land just because we're running out of it. And so our staff went through and we looked at architecture that was being approved in other communities, specifically those that were being approved in Carmel because they are known for their higher architecture, just to see how it compared to what we were getting here in Fishers. And so I wanted to show you all some of the recent homes that have been approved over the last 3 years in Carmel, just to give you a basis of what residential architecture they are getting, at least the caliber of architecture they're getting. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. But what they do all show is a high quality architectural residential product. As I was reviewing these, I mean, I took these all from the rezones, so there was none that I excluded from this presentation. Even in their more traditional production builder homes, you can see that they have high quality architectural features. This is a product with the side-loaded garages. Here's some elevations. I believe this might be Ryan Homes here, which I would say is a more high-quality Ryan Home product than what you traditionally see. Here's some real images of those homes. Here are some of those one-story empty nester products that we have been seeing more of. And then here is some additional empty nester products as well. Their most recent development that was approved is from a builder that primarily builds in Indianapolis. They look at more high-density settings, but it's Onyx and East. And so this is the more modern style architecture. So did want to highlight that for you all. But then we did compare some of the elevations to what we've seen recently in Fishers. So this was the same builder, pretty much the same development, and compared what they approved in Carmel to what we saw in Fishers. Generally, I would say they look relatively the same, right, if you're just looking at all of these. But when you look at the details, they're just a little bit different. Full masonry on the first floor, a little bit of different front porch features, like the banister on that front porch. So it could be just personal preference on the taste of what you like for your home. I would say generally the character was the same, but there are different features that I think we can take a look at to make sure we are getting, kind of the highest quality that we could get out of a builder. And then this next one, I think, shows really the starkest contrast that I saw. So these are both empty nester, age-targeted developments. And when I saw this comparison, the one that was this was approved in Fishers, by Plan Commission and PUD committee. But I would say what's shown on the left is really more of the high quality that we're looking for. We don't want to be Carmel. We don't want the exact elevations, but it's really the quality. We want to make sure we're getting that quality architecture. And so staff is going to be a little bit more, we're going to have a little bit more comments on our architecture if we do get products like you see here on the right moving forward. And I just wanted to set that tone for you all so you know when you see these comments moving forward what that means and where we're coming from.
Megan, can you, as a suggestion, I mean, I like that. Some of the things they had at Carmel I didn't really like compared to what we had, but some of the stuff I thought was really awesome. Particularly some roof lines that were in those other ones. I don't know if you picked that up early, Sean, and some of that stuff. Some really cool roof lines and some of that. But if you have a product that the builder is going to go do, put that in your packet for the city to say, here's what's in Carmel, here's what they're presenting here in Fishers. So we can see that contrast as we start to see them there, because everything starts to blend together for us at times. So it's good to have that visual differentiation in front of us to say, hey, what about that over there when you're sitting there? Because they had some really cool window aspects a lot in some of those buildings, which I really did like quite a bit. And then there was some decorative stuff up at the, forgive me for the nomenclature here, Sean, up at the peaks that I saw that was pretty interesting as well. I'm not a fan of banisters in front because it cuts the window, but that's just me. But again, personal preference, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think putting them in our packets would be highly beneficial.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I'd be curious, and you may not be able to even figure this out, to know in any of these kind of comparisons, the Carmel versus Fishers, if I'm guessing these are the same developer in both scenarios.
So the way Carmel approves it, it's hard to tell
Hard
within
to
their
tell a
approval
little bit,
process
yeah.
who the builder actually is, but I believe that these are both the Pulte products here on the screen, I believe.
So, I guess my question was, or my point was, are the architectural requirements being presented by the developer, or are the architectural requirements being mandated by the city? Who's starting the bus, I guess?
I think their development process works similar to ours, where it's a PUD ordinance that comes in, staff and the developer have that
The
conversation.
ordinance is already requiring that, so they have to present it that way.
Exactly. These elevations came from the rezone packets, so they were required as a part of the rezone. It was probably a conversation between the developer and the city.
Okay. Because it's, I guess the point of that question, I guess, maybe is, if the PUD doesn't have the teeth in it to require what's on our left, and the developer comes in with what's on the right, we can ask for them to do something, but we can't require it. They're gonna come in with the least they can do from a cost standpoint, right?
Yeah.
It's that's
Yeah.
the nature of the way people are gonna do it.
And I would say with new residential developments, you guys are probably gonna see it at that rezone phase. So that was with like Cynthia and Woods that you saw
Right.
tonight. That's being rezoned at Plan Commission tonight. So you guys do have a little bit
Say
more
that.
say in those elevations.
Okay.
Okay.
And then not related to that, 6% land remaining, do you know percentage-wise or commercial versus residential, what those numbers are?
Primarily residential.
Okay.
I mean, it could be rezoned to other things, but
Yeah.
primarily residential.
Because I was thinking is, these are obviously, you're kind of talking comparison-wise on the residential side of thing, and that's probably more where we're gonna see that.
And Sean, also put it in perspective, it does not include Swiss cheese holes, which currently have a very
And
big
pocket
yard
zoning.
on 116th Street, who has a car lot downtown that owns like 20 acres, puts his house way in the back. He goes to sell that at some point in time, and
It's
someone
gonna
comes
become
in,
something
it's an
else.
infill, so that would add on to that percentage, right? Because we're not including those, houses on those, and those
No,
are
we
deeded
look-
properties.
Yeah, we looked at, it could include unannexed parcels just because we do have zoning jurisdiction over them, but
Right.
we looked at largely agricultural, what's
Okay.
deemed
Well,
agriculture,
maybe it
or
doesn't, I don't know. but-
it depends on probably the
Right.
area,
So
but
we have a lot of infill that can go on, right? You start thinking
Right.
about that.
Which again, mostly is gonna be residential.
I would assume,
Whether
but
it's single
what kind of
family or
residential are gonna
multifamily.
go in there, we gotta think about, right?
Yeah.
Because it's definitely gonna be more dense as you go forward, for sure.
I think the one thing that is kind of the challenge and the Carmel versus Fishers piece is making sure we're not forcing them to put something that's in a price point that makes these not affordable for the majority of people that are in Fishers or coming to Fishers. We need to make sure that there's affordable housing, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
I'm not really sure how you build a house anymore that's affordable, Sean.
Yeah, true,
I
true,
mean, with everything, where everything's going, so.
Yeah. but,
Delicate balance,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Mhm.
delicate.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And maybe it's the higher density. You get the higher density, you can get more lots in a development, so you can,
Part of
that
it.
can help drop the price down, where you can still get a higher quality product at a lower price point that makes it not a $400,000 house.
Mhm.
That is a starter home. You don't need $400,000 starter homes,
No.
I guess is what I'm getting at.
yeah.
That's
It's
the
hard to
basic.
find that in
Yeah,
central
it is,
Indiana, it
yeah.
really is.
Sure. Well, thanks, Megan. I think we're a little into overtime.
Okay. Yep.
But I appreciate, that was a great
Yeah,
presentation.
helpful
Very helpful.
information.
Right. We don't have anything for River Place PUD Committee, so no other agenda items. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.